Today we're going to be doing a vibe coding test between GPT Codex, Claude Code using Claude Opus 4.5, and Google's Antigravity using Gemini 3 Pro. Now this is going to be an interesting test because their task is going to be the exact same thing, to build a game that works on the arcade cabinet behind us, which you may be familiar with because I did a video on it, its introduction to the channel using GLM 4.7 Flash with rather impressive results. So I'm very excited to see what these models are capable of putting out today. And to jump right into it, I want to say do not be concerned by the fact that I have the web chat interfaces for all of these up right now. The reason for this is we're going to be giving them an initial prompt as well as some reference so that they can go ahead and denote tasks for the specific agent that is from either of these model providers. So essentially what I'm saying right here is each of these models are just tasked with outlining the plan of action for the agent that will be subsequently taken using Codex, Claude Code, and Google's Antigravity. So really, I think the first thing to do is probably just quickly go over the prompt that we're giving each of these models, which are going to act as the initial orchestrator for this task, and then we'll jump into some agentic coding because the rest of this video will be done either through the terminal for Codex and Claude Code or using the UI interface that comes bundled with Google's Antigravity. So this is going to be rather exciting, at least for myself, and I hopefully the viewers feel that way as well. So feel free to subscribe and join as a channel member for less than 10 cents a day, and let's get into it. It's basically telling them that the task is to build a game to run on a custom device, which we have also attached a picture of because these models can visually reference this and that may influence some of their design decisions. So this is the specific image that we've attached alongside our prompt. In addition to that, there is also a Python script that just shows the proper control mapping for the inputs for this device, mainly the two arcade buttons, the steering wheel, one additional kind of blinker stock button, and then also the joystick. So just so they understand that, and we don't want to leave that open to interpretation because not having the controls mapped properly can just be a lot of painful debugging, which kind of is outside the scope of just seeing what games they make. Regardless of that, we can see that we're just instructing them to basically outline a plan of action for this agent, tasked with providing us the following things: an initial prompt to send to the agent. If there are to be multiple prompts, meaning if they want to use a planning mode initially and then a build mode, they should specify that as well as the subsequent prompts for either specific mode they choose to use. And in addition to that, they should also include any additional information that they want placed in the root project directory, such as a markdown file instructing the agent on specific things. I have told them the only thing contained within the project directory is the Python script for the control schema, so that the models can reference that and the agents can see, okay, these are the controls that I'm mapping it to. And I have said, because I don't want them to just try Python for this, as it would kind of be restrictive in terms of how cool of an end result. So I have specifically mentioned that that script being a Python file is not indicative of wanting a Python project. It is just a reference point for them to understand how the controls are implemented. So with that, we're basically ready to go ahead. And I will probably just start all of these at the same time, being that I know 5.2 on extended thinking, or heavy thinking as we see right here, is going to take a little while. I have extended thinking enabled for Opus 4.5, and Gemini 3 is set to Pro, and we also do have the canvas mode enabled. Game design document, Steel Thunder. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and see a 3D tank combat arena game designed specifically for the dual controller arcade cabinet. Okay, so that's first and foremost what we see for Claude. I'm not going to read through the entire thing verbosely right here. Let's see what Gemini 3 Pro. I get so excited when I love this stuff. Seriously, I very much enjoy this. All right, so what are you going to be giving us today? My mistake. I was stuck trying to parse the canvas, thinking that was the only output of it. It is it's made a bit more difficult by having these in this 33% segment window size for having 3 of them up at a time. Tank Commander or Mech Simulator. Very interesting. So 2 of them have opted to try to think of a tank thing. I will say I do like that Gemini 3 Pro has started out by complementing the hardware setup, so I do appreciate that very much. Now, I don't see any specific thing with the GPT output. Like with the other 2, we kind of had tank style games that were suggested. This one just says use something that has the controls. I think it's leaning more towards some form of racing game, being that I did see some vehicle selection things mentioned here, and I was wrong. I had actually neglected to see this specific design markdown file from GPT where it does mention the game design seed is to be a neon drift courier. That actually sounds pretty cool. I am personally probably more interested in seeing this result than the two tank games, just personal preference, but we definitely will have a wide variety of different options to play, hopefully, assuming they work. I have all of the repositories seeded now with the markdown files and every other bit of information that these models wanted for their agents. So now I'm just going to sequentially begin actually coding with these. And I think this needs to be done one at a time, at least for the initial start, because I will get overwhelmed and probably copy paste the wrong thing into the wrong model. Now let's go ahead and set this to the highest end model. So if we type model right here, we are going to use 5.2 Codex, but if we press enter, we can select a different reasoning effort, which is going to be extra high. And they do give us a warning that this can consume tokens at a significantly higher rate. However, I am looking for maximum performance and we'll see how it does. GPT has not told me to do anything specific. It just says prompt A and prompt B. So this hypothetically should just be sent to the agent right now. And then following that, once that's done, I should just do this. So really, unless I've misread something, it seems like we can just basically copy paste this in and then press enter. And that begins our GPT 5.2 Codex xHigh thinking. Now, I was initially thinking perhaps I could try these like one video for each specific model here just to, stretch out the max amount of content from a YouTuber perspective. I decided not to do that. It'd be more interesting with all of these in one video. I am now somewhat starting to regret that just because this is a bit chaotic, though we'll see what happens. So Claude had put all of the things that it wants us to do in terms of specific modes, specific prompts in this action plan markdown file, which I neglected to notice upon initial look through the generated results from these online chat agents. But now we're going to go ahead and just see, send this with extended thinking, enabled high reasoning budget, validate the design plan architecture, and identify risks. Now, interestingly enough, Claude has opted to use the Godot game engine for this, something I've personally never in my life used, though I do find it very interesting. So there's going to perhaps be some form of learning curve for myself, being that I did not restrict how they go about making these games. So Godot is a perfectly reasonable way to go. I just may have to do a little more work than anticipated. Okay, so Claude's given me a few different options, one of which is the tab key. So we can use that, or we can just use the ultra-think keyword. Now, personally, I think it's not the best to have like a bunch of different keywords here to prompt it to think more. I'd just rather have like a... Okay, good. So Claude agrees with me that it is a janky solution to have to put these weird keywords in. But, okay, so we'll just do what it says. And now we're going to send our ultra think plan. And now Claude is running as well as GPT has run. So this is really a disaster to wrangle these at the same time. I'm wholeheartedly regretting having not just done separate videos for each of these, which I suppose I still could do, being that this video hasn't been put out yet, but I'm committed. I'm now invested. So let's start Antigravity. So I just got a warning that Antigravity quit unexpectedly, but it's still open. So I'm probably just going to opt to ignore that. I do have planning mode selected, as Gemini 3 said we should do for our initial prompt, and we do also have Gemini 3 Pro High enabled. So we're just going to paste our initial prompt now here into Antigravity as well. And we now have all three of these embarked on the initial phase, which was all of them basically wanted an initial prompt. So as I was saying, all of these basically began with an initial prompt to allow the agent to plan based off of the outline or architecture for the game that was decided by the web chat interface agents. So now we have all of them working. I'm going to wait till they have all completed the planning phase to go into the next prompt, which will embark upon the actual build of this, just to keep things a little coherent. I think that this is where we may begin to stray from the prompt, because I almost want to just allow it to continue now, as opposed to sending the prompt that GPT had said I should subsequently send once this has been done. But I suppose I will... This is tough now. I kind of want to let the agent just work how it decides to do. So being that that is the case, and keep in mind this may be wrong, but we'll just allow them to work in the way they want to. I think I was maybe supposed to use an arrow key there to select one of those. It seems to have understood what specifically was going to go on. And Gemini is just asking for permission initially to create the plan.markdown file, as I had not granted it permission to create files in that directory. And that is going ahead and creating that now. So we'll wait for that to happen so we can have them all building at the same exact time. Key decisions. Okay, I'm fine with the concept. The critical risk is that it does not know if Godot is going to be able to properly enumerate and distinguish these HID devices. And it's giving me a confidence level here. In that case, I would probably just tell it, then use something else, because I kind of don't want to have to deal with a bunch of Godot stuff right now, being that I've genuinely never used it. I'm actually fine with letting it try this, even using Godot, because it has baked in the implementation order. First and foremost, we need to just verify that the inputs actually work. So if they don't work with Godot, then we can go back and have it use a different language or something of the sort. But I figure I want to allow it to continue doing what it wants to do, at least until we know make or break if the controls are actually going to work. I would assume they're going to. Now we have Google Agent Manager, and I could have sworn that I had set the settings in this to make everything a bit more visible. Okay, so Antigravity has given us our design document for a game called Borecore. I don't want to laugh at that because there may be some technical term that actually makes sense for this kind of trench driver tunnel shooter. Oh, it's going to use Python and Ursina. This is going to be quite a task to make look good comparatively to GPT choosing to just use like 3JS or something. So this will be neat. We do have our document we can kind of take a quick peek at right here, but to be honest with you, I'm just going to let them go ahead and do whatever they want. Oh, it has given me multiple different concepts that I could choose from though. And it did go ahead and select a specific concept just from all of these, which I'm cool with then, because that eliminates me having to choose one specifically and then potentially making the wrong choice, subjectively speaking. So I'm just going to let this go ahead. Okay, do whatever you want. Now they're all, except for Claude, building. Or is Claude building right now as well? It is building. Very cool. So we now have Codex 5.2 xHigh, Opus 4.5 with UltraThink, and Gemini 3 Pro vibe coding games for our arcade cabinet. Very exciting. So apparently Borecore is done, which was very quick, which concerns me a bit. There is one window here that will specifically show us the files it has created, and we see we have our Borecore game and a bunch of other things. So I suppose we can just briefly look at these while we're... Oh wow, okay, so the changes in zoom level were definitely reflected more prominently in this anti-gravity window. I just basically want to see how long these scripts are. I know length is no measure of intricacy, but I'll be very interested to see how this game works. I've completed the complete foundation for Steel Thunder. I like it. I'm just going to let this proceed with phase 2, and I will manually handle the Godot installation so that we don't waste tokens on stuff that human can easily do comparatively to actually coding this entire thing with rapid quickness. So we're allowing Claude to continue with phase 2. And again, yeah, I didn't have anything to say there. GPT is still working. We're down to 87% context length left, so this will be very interesting. I find that the Claude is obviously known for its fantastic aesthetic capabilities. When using specific like paywalled models from OpenAI like GPT 5.2 Pro, I have seen some very promising 3D design capability, and being that this is opting to just use this in a simpler way with like some 3JS, this could be very aesthetically pleasing potentially. I'm probably just going to figure out how to install Godot on this dev arcade console behind me. I can now say that I have used Godot because that was probably one of the simplest application installs that I've seen on Ubuntu. Well done. So all of these are at some initial level of us being able to play them at varying levels. So we see Claude right here is allowing me to proceed with phase 3 if I want to, but before I continuously go with it, I want to test this in Godot first, being that it was initially unsure if the controls would actually work in that engine. GPT has given us our project as well, and it gives us some potential next steps that we can take, such as just trying the prototype, testing it with the hardware, and then we can also expand. But I think we're at a level now where we can safely go ahead and try all of these, which is exciting. So we're now ready to try our first result, and I think I'm going to try this from easiest to hardest in terms of level of complexity to actually get them set up with dependencies and everything, meaning that our Gemini 3 Pro result is the easiest to run, so we'll test this one first, followed by the ChatGPT result, then finally the Claude result. I am very excited, and we'll see, fingers crossed, how this goes. All right, we did get it Did something go wrong? Because we're going to come back to this one. So I'm very happy to report that, as we can see on the screen of the arcade machine, the Gemini 3 Pro result has a ton of errors. Basically, it's missing shapes and things that would make this game not look like a 2D piece of garbage. So this is something we can give this now for our second iteration in the true vibe coding fashion, and it will inevitably make it look far more impressive than the red square on screen. So now I'm just going to hop in and try the Codex 5.2 xHigh result, which it has given me a README file as well, which I'm just taking a look through just to see how it wants me to go about actually starting this. All right, let's get our first look at the Codex game result. Okay. As a first draft, that's not horrible, and basically so far, while they have not necessarily been what I expected, the controls are correctly working with both the Gemini 3 Pro and the Codex results, which is good to see. This one is obviously a bit more immersive, and it has a low poly aesthetic, not necessarily what I'd hoped to see when it said it was making a drift game, but perhaps my expectations were a bit high, although I do have justifiable reason for that, which we can showcase later in the video. Now our next step is for the initial testing of these results, and our first try is to go ahead and figure out how to use Godot to run the Claude Code result. So while that was perhaps visually the most impressive, it didn't actually work. The control maps did not work, which is quite upsetting. Being that the other two did work with the controls, I don't want to have to try to troubleshoot this with working with this specific game engine. Although I'm going to be completely honest, in terms of my first impressions with using Godot and just what I see, I very much like it. So this may be something I play more with later, but for right now, I'm more interested in just getting like a decent looking web game. And here's where I'm at right now. So I'm extremely frustrated because last night I used Claude Code for basically 20 minutes and I had it iterate upon the game we created with GLM 4.7 Flash, saying I want you to make a little 3D low poly city with this, have separate views for the cars and stuff like that. And this is what it created. So I was kind of anticipating more of what we just saw instead of the three very unique results we received today. I almost have to wonder if how I went about this initially was incorrect, where I had the online versions of these models, and not even versions, just like the ChatGPT website one, plan out the implementation plan for this. I almost feel like if I just prompted them and said, here's a file that maps the controls for my arcade cabinet, make me a 3D low poly highway racing game, we probably would have received a better result. And now I don't know what to do. I basically hate all of these results so much that I don't even want to spend time trying to make them better. I want to call this like phase 1, which, so maybe we'll go into phase 2 now and see if we can just get something decent out of these, because these all sucked.